Hi, I'm David Hackoff, Executive Director of NewFest, New York's leading LGBTQ film and media organization, and I am so excited to welcome you to this conversation, Queer Lens on Lens, Spotlight on Women and Non-Binary Cinematographers. We are really excited about this conversation. These are artists and craftspeople who don't always get the spotlight that they deserve, considering the immense contribution that they make to the stories that we tell. So this is going to be, I think, a really great conversation. This is one of over 130 films and events and panels that are happening at the New York LGBTQ Film Festival, which is happening through October 26th. We have a ton of incredible content and amazing stories. So please visit newfest.org to see the full lineup of activity at the festival. For now, I am delighted to introduce the director of our partner on this event, ReFrame. ReFrame is a joint initiative of the Sundance Institute and Women in Film. And Andria Wilson Mirza is the director, and she is an incredible friend to me personally. She is an incredible friend of NewFest. She has a history of leading an LGBTQ festival. She was the executive director of Inside Out for many years, and now she's doing incredible work at ReFrame. And we're so excited to partner with ReFrame on this and to have Andria moderating this conversation. So here's Andria.
Oh, thank you so much, David. I'm so thrilled to be here. And as David said in his introduction, shining a light on these incredible, incredible talents. And I will say multi-talents. The folks that we're speaking with today are cinematographers. They're also directors. They're also editors, really incredible creatives. And I'm so thrilled to get to dive into this conversation with them. So again, this is Queer Lens on Lens, our spotlight on women and non-binary cinematographers here at NewFest. So I think let's bring them out. Let's bring them to the stage. Hey, I'll just do a quick round of intros so everybody knows who's who. I won't point to the screen because I don't know how people are seeing this. I don't know where you are. But we've got with us in, I was going to say no particular order, but I'm pretty sure it's alphabetical, Ashley Iris Gill, who is coming in from Toronto. Ashley is a queer Toronto-based cinematographer, director, and editor. Welcome, Ashley Iris Gill. We've also got Aubree Bernier-Clarke with us, a director and cinematographer, as well as an alum of AFI's directing workshop. Welcome, Aubree. We've got April Maxey, a queer Chicana filmmaker, originally from San Antonio, Texas, now based in LA, just down the street from me, I believe. Welcome, April. And we've got another Toronto representation in the house, Lulu Way, Toronto-based director and cinematographer who holds an MFA in documentary media from Ryerson University. Welcome, everybody. How you doing?
Hi.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm obsessed with this group. There's so many great, when I see you all and when I see your faces and see your names, I'm reminded of the many, many queer projects and other work that I have seen your names associated with. And it's really powerful to see you all together in one room. So let's hear a little bit more from y'all. I would love to just go around and have everyone just introduce yourselves to the audience and share a little bit of your superhero multi-talent origin story. So how you came into this work, came into this moment, and in particular would love to hear about how you came into your work as a cinematographer. So let's kick it off with Ashley.
I knew I was going to go first.
You knew.
I knew. Yeah, so my name is Ashley Iris Gill. I'm a DP, I would say more so DP editor, more so than directing, because I'm focusing more on shooting and editing stuff. I guess everyone probably has a long journey, as do I, but I'll kind of condense it. So I kind of started film in the beginning as a writer, and I was just really excited, kind of creating a story in my head, and I just really wanted to find a way to kind of make it come to life. So I kind of tried the whole directing thing and it was cool, but I just felt that I was working a lot with like combative male DPs and stuff. So I just felt like I was getting really frustrated every job where it's like they weren't super listening to me, but because I was an editor, I also knew like what I needed like at the end of the day. So I was just like, I'm like, it can't be that hard to get into like cinematography, even though I was so intimidated by all like the tech, like the lights, understanding everything. It just felt very sciencey. But I was like, you know what? I rather take a chance and kind of learn and figure out how to actually like shoot my own stuff versus like dealing with hard personalities. So I started doing little small music videos here and there for like my friends, little small docs, little small passion projects. And then I kind of interned at a commercial house, which kind of was like the beginning of my career. I went from one commercial house as an intern, and then I went to another one as an in-house DP, and then I kind of just like went up that way. It's a super condensed version, but definitely went from writer to editor to DP.
I love it. Thanks, Ash. Aubree.
So I've always been a very visual person and somebody that took a lot of photos growing up and studied photography in college. But film was always my dream. It just wasn't an option where I was from originally in Kentucky. So when I moved to the West Coast and got a job at my first film job was at a small production company as an editor, actually, also. So I had that background as well. And I was mostly editing, but because it was a small company, I was able to kind of fill in here and there doing various different things. And so I started doing some camera operating on different shoots and just found that it was a natural fit for me and that I was able to apply the knowledge that I had from photography to cinematography. And I also just really loved the energy of being on set. So once I got going with that, I kind of just ran with it. And I amazingly had access to a lot of our company's equipment. So, on weekends, I would be able to borrow stuff and go make music videos with my friends and that sort of thing. And so I was living in Portland at the time, and I was able to just kind of start working with other indie directors here in town and shooting things for various people, and just got like a lot of experience, working on different scales of projects. And I always noticed that I loved to watch the director and learn how different directors work and kind of just observe how they gave direction and what kinds of ideas they had. And as things went along, I just always found myself also having thoughts and like being like, oh, I wish I could like step in and say this one thing, or being like, oh, I wish we could get a take like this. And so I was like, maybe I'll just give it a try. So started directing some small scale projects that I was also shooting. And then when I got into AFI, I had the opportunity to just focus on directing and start working with other DPs, which was also really cool. So, ever since then, I've been kind of straddling both worlds, but sort of moving more into directing as a long-term goal.
Awesome. Thank you. And I want to go to April, who I think is also, are you doing the AFI workshop right now?
Yeah, I'm in it now, and we're like on the final stages of post for the film that I did there. So yeah. So my journey into cinematography, I went to like an art school, so it definitely wasn't like, it was very like kind of everyone does everything themselves. So my first two shorts that I wrote and I directed and I shot them. And yeah, I think my thesis one played at New Fest actually, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like nervous at public speaking. My friend gave me this like rock that's supposed to help me. But
you're perfect. You're perfect. The rock is working, and we're all with you. We all have our own crystals, I'm sure, just off camera, centering us. So please.
Yes. So yeah, after I graduated, I AC'd for a little bit, like freelance on indie sets, which I actually worked for some like really awesome women directors, like as a second AC or a first AC. And then I got a full-time job as a camera assistant at a music network, but then I eventually like was cam opping and I was DPing for them. And so I was there for like 2.5 years, and it's really there I learned like, studio lighting. I learned like docu style stuff. I was like following around musicians all the time, and like thinking quickly how to like visually communicate a story. When you're like shooting famous people, you have like a very limited amount of time. So it was like a really good training ground for me. And then I was also able to like build my portfolio like through the content I was shooting there, but like I was always doing stuff on the side, like Aubree said, you know, like borrowing gear, doing music videos for indie artists and friends and stuff. So then I quit and I was a freelance DP and editor and director. And I'm in AFI, so yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. Lulu.
Hello. And yeah, thank you for having me. And I have a very roundabout way of how I got into DPing and directing. But I went to do my MFA like right out of undergrad in documentary media, but I went in being like, I want to be a photojournalist. But then I left with like a short film, and it made me really love like documentary filmmaking. But then I ended up being like a camera trainee in IA for a little bit. And then I actually went into advertising and was like an in-house like shooter director in advertising for a bunch of years. And then I moved to this apartment and I just started documenting everything that was happening around me in this apartment. And there was like this redevelopment happening. It ended up being my first feature documentary film. And like Aubree, I would just like go to work and like, you know, borrow gear. And if we had like a shoot, I would just like keep the gear for like the weekend and go and shoot in this neighborhood. And then I ended up getting funding for the film, and a broadcaster hopped on board, and I finished the film and went freelance, but worked on the film for like 2 years as a freelancer, but for 2 years, a full-time job in advertising. And it premiered last year at Hot Docs, and did the whole digital festival, virtual festival run thing, and am now working on another feature doc, but am also straddling the world of directing and DPing, but really love DPing and like cam opping for other projects.
Amazing. Thanks, y'all. It is so interesting to hear the commonalities throughout your experiences. And you know, I'm sure this is not new information to y'all, but it might be new information perhaps to our audiences, which is that cinematography is a very cis male dominated field. At the organization I work with, ReFrame, we do analysis each year on who's working on what, who's getting hired, particularly at the kind of studio level, who's working on these projects. And last year, of the top 100 feature films that were released, 7 of those were lensed by women or non-binary DPs. In the top 200 TV shows of the past year, 12% of those shows hired a non-cis male DP to shoot at least one episode. But I will share that our crack team did a little analysis of the New Fest lineup this year, and almost 30% of the films at New Fest were shot by women or non-binary DPs. So this is well above the norm. I mean, there's a part of me that's like, you know, we want to get beyond 30% too. But I think it is really interesting to look at the high numbers in terms of queer content. And I want to talk a little bit about that in terms of your, like, how, when you hear those numbers, how does that track with your own experiences working in this industry, of what you've seen, of maybe how it's different working on a queer project, or maybe it's not, and just to get into that a little bit, because I'm sure you all have some wisdom and some stories and experiences to share. Anyone want to hop in on that first?
I've got things to say about this. I mean, you know, for better or for worse, and I'd say probably mostly for worse, it's a very nepotistic industry, and people hire people that remind them of themselves, and people who are like, oh, you're like me when I was just starting out. And unfortunately, most of the people doing that hiring are white cis men. And so, you know, that trickles down, it just all the way down, you know? So the reason why we're seeing more female and non-binary cinematographers in the queer space is because we're hiring our own people. And that's what it's going to take. Like, the decision makers have to be more diverse to in order for the whole community to become more diverse. I think that's why the situation is what it is.
Yeah, I hear that. I see heads nodding. Ash?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, I agree. I think another reason why it's hard for like non-binary or like female cinematographers to like break through is that it's just so intimidating to actually like take up space in this way. And also I think that we don't have the same resources that like some of these cis men have. So when we do get an opportunity to create, we can't create at the level that we want. So it kind of keeps us in like a certain realm. But like as Aubree was saying, like hiring our own people is like one of the best things, because I think for me, like queer sets or sets where there's a lot of women or non-binary, LGBT, or like POCs, they're a lot safer in my opinion. Like I feel like we're more collaborative. We're able to make mistakes. We all kind of have each other's back in a different way than when it's just like me stepping on a set, because like I come from the commercial world. So I'm really used to working with like a lot of like males. Like every single day, it's just like me and them. Like it's never really much different. And even when I am DPing, depending on the scale, I get suggested crew, because it's like, oh, this is a really big project, you should work with this guy. Or, oh, this project is super this, you should work with this person. And sometimes I can fight for my picks, but oftentimes it's like, because of the scale, like they kind of force me into working with certain people, which I guess is a safety net for them, but it also isn't always great for me.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. Lulu, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah. Also, like, I think the amount of times if I've been somewhere and there was like, because I also come from advertising, like I had a production coordinator who's like a straight cis white man, and they would just go and talk to him right away instead of talking to me, even though I was like directing and shooting it. Even like recently on like my own film set, like we had a new sound person just step in, and automatically he like went to talk to my like camera operator, who is like, you know, like a gay man who I love, but like just didn't really engage with me. And I was like, oh, it's just so interesting. Even like when you're on sets, like even if you have the role, who's gonna maybe listen to you, or who's gonna like respect you, or even like, you know, engage with you. And I think like also with like intersectionality, like, you know, on times on sets where I'm just like, maybe it is more like there's like more representation in one way, but there's not representation in another way, kind of thing. And so, yeah, I think like with our own sets and like with queer sets, I think just growing up thinking about like your identity in some kind of way, I think it just makes us maybe consider it more, and who we feel like would listen to us better, or create like a safe, comfortable space where everybody is heard. I think that's maybe why it happens, and I'm glad it happens, because I think a lot of times we don't get the opportunity, because it's like, how do you get to do bigger things if no one gives you a chance? And it's like nice to have people who've like taken chances, so that like I've been able to do things because someone took a chance on me, kind of thing.
April, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I owe a lot of my career to queer folks and women of color, because those are the people that have taken chances on me and hired me. And so I do feel lucky in a way that a lot of the sets that I work on are like queer led and women led and POC led, but I also, I don't come from a commercial or advertising world. Like I don't work on like a huge scale a lot of times. And so I do think like what Ashley was saying, that is a barrier with like, even just like access to gear, or like when you're first starting out, if, you know, like I've been considered for like branded content stuff. And at the time, I maybe had never used an Alexa or an Amir, and they're like, well, do you have experience with this camera? And it's like, well, the sets I'm working on aren't like, you know, they can't afford like $2,000 camera packages a day, you know. But yeah, and I've definitely like walked on a set that I'm directing and been like mistaken as a PA, or like been on this set. Like I was on a set that there was like 11 cam ops and I was the only woman. And yeah, like as soon as I get there, you know, they're like, oh, you're the AC. And it's like, no, actually, like I'm a cam op. And it's just, I think people have to like there's still like, when you go outside of the queer and women run sets, people are still sort of reframing their idea of what a director looks like or what a cinematographer looks like. So yeah.
Yeah, Ash, go. Yeah.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry, I was just gonna add one thing that I also found interesting, because like as someone who does commercials, but also being a queer person, I have like this weird thing where it's like I work on these really big things and I get like all these resources, and then anything to do with POCs, queer, LGBT, any of those things, we never have money. So it's almost like this weird thing that even shows up in my work, because it's like you'll look at something that I've done and it's like, wow, it looks so amazing. And something else looks a little bit like different, because it's like they're only funding these projects this way and these projects this way, but it's like the same creative behind it. So I find it very interesting. And like now that's why like I think talent is a big part of like being a great cinematographer, but like your resources and what you have access to is like a big part of it. Like some jobs I'll have like any light that I want, I can do all the crazy stuff. And then other jobs I have like one light and maybe two lenses in a small space. So it's just very interesting to see like, that's why I also like want to celebrate everyone here, because like we're doing great work with a lot less resources than other people are.
This is such a great point, and I feel like I'm feeling this in what y'all are saying, and it's reflected in the numbers too, right? It's like that representation in the queer films. Most of these are at a lower budget level. Most of these features are under $2 million. Most of these shorts are under $30,000. You know, these are low budget levels, and so that means that people also aren't being compensated at, you know, a higher level. So it's like a continued challenge for everyone, and you're just trying to get that money up on the screen. And you know, something that a friend and brilliant director Anisha Ganatra has talked about in the past is around, you know, when you go to call in reels, when you're hiring a DP, and the difference between the reels that some of these guys are sending, and, you know, when you're really wanting to prioritize hiring queer people, hiring women of color, and as you said, Ash, like, because the resources aren't there necessarily in those productions, the reels are like apples and oranges, right? And that's really what it comes down to. And it's a very frustrating piece of the industry, where to get hired, you know, you need to have that work product so that you're seen as, well, they've had the experience at this level. Yeah, Aubree.
I just have an anecdote along those lines. I was recently up for a directing job, and it was an episode for a docu-series that was going to be broadcast. And so, you know, the producer was somebody I've worked with in the past who definitely advocated for me and thought that I was like a good fit for the project. But ultimately what it came down to was that somebody else had been hired to direct the project, and it was a white guy that didn't have a lot of experience, and he got fired. And so when it came to trying to get me to potentially get the job, I hadn't directed episodic in that time length. So I've directed multiple multi-season web series, you know, of episodes that are like 10 minutes long or whatever, but they needed somebody that's directed a 30 to 60 minute episode. And since I didn't have that experience, they were like, oh, we already took a chance on somebody that didn't have that experience, and it didn't work out. So we need somebody that has exactly directed this length of television. But for the dude, it was okay to try.
Right. There is still that, you know, pervasive kind of idea that women, anyone who's not cis, anyone who is a person of color, there's an inherent risk involved in hiring, and that is what, you know, we really need to push back against as an industry, because the talent is there, the work is there, and you know, it's really about shifting the system and creating the change so that hiring works differently. And we all know there are some great directors out there and some amazing producers that are, like you said, Lulu, you know, reaching out and giving the opportunity, or saying, you know, we want to give this opportunity to someone who maybe hasn't worked at this budget size before. But that is still definitely the exception, and not the norm. So I loved hearing y'all talk about like the queer work and the queer sets, or the women run sets that you've worked on. Does anyone have like a particular example of like that, you know, kind of difference of like how it feels to, you know, work on a set in that space versus what we could consider a more traditional set structure in terms of who's in charge? Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. I just think like there's honestly a lot of differences between like queer sets and like ones that are primarily run by like cis men. But I think like the biggest thing is just like the feeling that you have, like you actually feel like deeply supported. And I know I like mentioned that before, but it's just like it's just knowing that like everyone there actually has your back versus like people maybe like don't care about your opinion, or they don't want to help you out, or they don't respect you. But I feel like when you're on a queer set, it's like everyone literally just wants to make amazing art. And because we don't get as many opportunities, like everything that we do work on is like our baby. Like we really nurture it. We really try to tell the best story. We really try like our hardest, bring any resources you have. Like we really try to figure it out to like make the best thing. And I think with these bigger projects, the love isn't in the same way, in my opinion, as someone coming from commercials, because it's all about the sale. Like I think when I work on queer things, it's deeply rooted in like love of the project, or like you're telling a really deep story. And then commercials, it's like, how can we sell this toilet paper, or what color is going to make somebody buy this thing? So it is very, very different in my opinion.
Yeah, I think when you are starting from a place of like mutual respect and trust, it's just more freeing, and like you can like play and grow together and like try stuff, and you're like more unafraid of like, you know, oh, like, you know, I don't know, like you're, yeah. What
You can
else?
just take more chances. I know what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
you can make a mistake and no one's gonna say anything about it. And because we don't get opportunities, we're learning and playing on the jobs that we're on. Like it's not like
Yeah.
a lot of other people where it's just like we can just get this kit. Like I know all of us have done the whole borrowing stuff from other jobs, but oftentimes like it's like, okay, well, I want to try this new technique on this job because I finally got this light or X, Y, and Z. So I feel you. It's like a safe place to play and learn.
Yeah, and I feel like playing is like where more creative things happen, you know, when you are taking risks and stuff, like that's where like magical things can happen too. So yeah.
I don't love making sweeping generalizations about gender overall. I try to stay away from that. However, in my own experience, working on sets with female and queer directors, they've been more prepared every single time. They've been more prepared than male directors. They listen. I mean, again, I hate to generalize, but in my own experiences, so many of women in queer run sets, I feel listened to. There's time to do introductions to everyone at the beginning of the day so that things move smoother and we all know who each other are and work better together. You know, they make their days more consistently. And I think a lot of it has to do with that. Like, if you're a woman, you have to be really effing good to get these opportunities. And, you know, and they have been. And it's unfortunate that that's not the majority of directors that are working today, to be honest.
Yeah, like for my experience of like being on queer and like women sort of like run sets, I feel like there's no like bro, or there's like way less bro culture, and there's like less like, I guess, like trying to one up people. I feel like, I don't know, sometimes on straight sets it can feel like weirdly competitive, and like especially in the camera department, it's like, you know, like I was on a set and I had this like male AC cam op, and he like just graduated and he was like, well, normally I DP, but like, and then I was like, okay, cool. But just like the weird energy, or I think it's like constantly being thinking like, is like, are they sort of going to be like, oh, I could do this like better, or as like a director and having like male like DPs, sometimes I've had ones like in advertising where I feel like they just like didn't listen to me or would go do their own thing, and I was just like, okay, cool. So I definitely always like try and be like, I want to listen to you, and make sure that you feel comfortable and like you're supported. And I feel like a lot of like queer and like women and non-binary run sort of sets like provide that support, or that like feeling that like you're in a safe space and we're like all in it together to try and make something, and it doesn't feel like it's so weirdly hierarchical, and like maybe we're all kind of just like on the same level trying to make something together.
Yeah, like there's less ego. Like I feel like on a lot of sets, like there's, or you know, like not like cis white male run only sets. There's like a lot of ego, and some people have very, I don't know. It makes it a little difficult sometimes.
No, that's real. Yeah, Ash, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just gonna touch on one thing, because like when Aubree mentioned even the fact of like when you step on a queer set, like right on the top of the day, the whole intro thing, I found that very interesting, because like that's all the difference. Like just having a little huddle of being like, who is everyone, and figure out like what everyone does. Because after you said that, I'm like, the major difference now, like I changed my answer, is more so that queer projects care more about the people on set. And I think the other projects I work on, they care more about the product and the money and the end results. Like I think on queer sets, it's just like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Da 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 da. Do you need more time? Like it's like we care more about like the health and wellness of everyone and like what they're doing. But I think on the bigger sets that I'm working on, it's like they don't care if we're like no one's drinking water all day because we're running around like crazy. Like they just don't care about people in the same way. And I've gone whole sets where there's people I haven't talked to at all, or they haven't talked to me at all. And I find that weird. But on queer sets, I get to know every single person.
I love that. Like, it's what you're describing. Like, this is what I find so fascinating, because it's like, isn't this how everyone should want to work? Like, that sounds great. Like, I love that. I want to walk into the set and feel safe at work. Like, what an, you know, that it's so, it's what it's aspirational, right? This is what we want every set and every space where we're creating work. That's what we want it to feel like. Quick question for the folks that are also directing projects right now, or, you know, are you DPing your own work, or are you hiring or collaborating with a DP? And if so, what is that process like for you?
I can go. So yeah, for the AFI DWW work, film I just shot, I worked with a wonderful DP named Melinda James, and I mean, collaborating with her was just like everything, because I feel like, I don't know, there was just like a tenderness there. We like would, and also we had all this time because we were supposed to shoot, you know, like a year ago, and then COVID happened. And so we just had all of this time to like get to know each other and like send each other movies or photo references, or just take walks and talk about what it is we want to, you know, do in the world. And like, I don't know, yeah, that was very, very special. And also she came from a more like a documentary background as well, which I liked, you know. I was like, I don't know, like, yeah, her real popped thing. And she's queer.
Beautiful. Aubree, what about you?
So I guess when I went to AFI, that was one of the first times that I had the opportunity to not shoot something that I was directing. And it was amazing because, I mean, directing and DPing both require so much focus and concentration and brain power. And I think for certain smaller things, you know, it's easier, makes sense to DP your own work. But if you really want to take things to another level or have like a bigger story or a bigger vision, it's just so much better to collaborate with someone, I think. And like, I've found that when I work with DPs, they're so grateful that I already have a shorthand with them of like, I know what different shots are called, you know, and I know what the different gear is that gets us to where we want to be visually, so they don't have to guess. And so I've found that it just like the process works so fast and we're just kind of like instant mind meld, and it's been incredible. So I always try to work with a DP if I can, if I'm directing something. And I've only had great experiences with that.
Love that. Lulu?
I am shooting the film that I'm directing right now, the documentary, and I find it works great when I'm doing verite stuff because I'm like, I know exactly what I want and how to follow them, but it's really hard sometimes because I'm like, actually, I need to engage, but I want to be over there doing something, but I need to like be talking and like doing stuff. And I find, especially with like commercials or narrative, like anytime I'm dealing with actors, I'm like, I'd much prefer to just focus on like one or the other, because I think it's like, then you just sort of forget, or you're just like not thinking enough about one thing or the other. And like shooting the film I'm directing right now, I realize I'm very picky sometimes as a DP, and I'll just want to keep like, I want to readjust a light or something, but I'm like, whoa, I need to like turn off that part of my brain, because I'm like, I need to get them to answer the questions, like, and get the content that I need. But then it's always just like, please, like, just, you know, just like readjust this one thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to stop focusing on how it looks and think of it like the story. And so I think it's like really hard sometimes to separate and then to like focus 100% on either. So a lot of times if there's budget, I like to be able to just focus on one or the other. But if there is like very small budgets, like for something, and I have to do both, I'm like happy to do both. But I definitely like working with a DP if I'm directing, and I definitely love like, especially DPing for directors when it's doc, because a lot of times you're like, if it's run and gun and you're in the field, it's like, you know what the director is looking for, but they're kind of just like, go and like follow the action kind of thing. And in that way, it's nice because it's like you sort of get a lot of freedom with all that.
I feel like we're almost out of time. In fact, I know we're almost out of time, but I would love just one last super quick question for everyone. If you could leave us with sharing a goal that you have for yourself in your work as a DP or as a director. What kind of project maybe you want to work on? What's the next level? What's the next step for you? What's something you dream of doing so that everyone watching this can manifest and make that shit come true? Let's put it out there. Ash, you know I'm coming to you first.
Of course. Honestly, I think I just really want to take up more space in the narrative world, because I think I've like done a lot of commercials. I've done a lot of like docs now and music videos. And I think narrative is like my weak point, which is why I think I need to like get my feet more like wet in that. So I think definitely just taking up more space in narrative and doing less commercials.
Got it. Okay, we're making that happen. Aubree, what's your dream?
Well, my most recent short film that I directed that was on the festival circuit is called A Normal Girl, and it's a documentary about intersex human rights that I collaborated with an amazing intersex activist named Pigeon Pagonis on, and we really want to make a feature to get the word out to end unnecessary surgeries on intersex babies and children. And yeah, it's a human rights issue, and it's very underrepresented in the media, and I just really want to get a bigger platform to help share that message with a feature.
Fantastic. Okay, that's one we can definitely manifest. I've seen the short and it's amazing. Is it available online now that folks can see it?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's yet available online, although it is distributed by Women Make Movies, and so I think
great.
you can maybe see it through them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. April.
I mean, I would love to transition to mostly directing. And like I'd love to be working in the feature space and the episodic space for narrative directing. Yeah, and my short film that I did at AFI, I'm hoping will have like a good festival run next year. So yeah.
Beautiful. Lulu.
Well, I have to finish my feature doc that I'm currently on, and it is like a queer doc. So hopefully get it into some awesome film fests and get to do a in-person festival run, because I feel like I really missed out on getting an in-person festival run for my last film. And I'd like to, I think, like get repped in America for commercial directing, and get to direct like bigger broadcast spots. And yeah, like try moving into narrative as well, and DP on a lot more projects, like more docs and series, and maybe you get to work in America somehow.
The people are listening to this panel who can make all of this happen. I really believe that. And I believe in y'all so much, and am such a fan of all of your work. I can't wait to see what's next. And I hope that one of the things that is next is that we will all get to share space, maybe at a film festival, that y'all will get to meet each other, maybe collaborate in the future, because that's the really beautiful thing about the work that NewFest does and the work that these festivals do, is they really do bring us together. So thank you all. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your time and being so generous. And we will look forward to meeting again soon. And thanks, NewFest.
Thank you.
Thanks, NewFest.
Thank you.
Thank you.